Hello, everyone. This is Dave Warner with Small Town Life, part of the Studio 25 podcast network. And today we're going to talk nothing but dogs. Mohawk Valley DiamondDawgs. We've got team owner Travis Heiser on here. And then we're going to talk about the host family program. You know, where do these kids stay when they come up here? And we've got somebody who's had like a zillion kids at her place stay over the years. Chris is here. And so anyway, Travis, we're going to start with you. I want to know how the team is going here. What's going on? You know, we're Thanksgiving time, and what's been happening.
Yeah, listen, it's been a very busy off season, right? Obviously, we're getting sponsorships and signing players for the upcoming 25 season. So far, we have signed approximately 33 players. This year, we have players coming from different schools that we might not typically have had players from. We have 12 colleges that are going to be represented on this year's roster. We started to announce couple of weeks ago, those colleges and universities that our 25 roster players will be coming from. Some of those schools we have, some of them will sound familiar, some of them might sound new, but we have players coming from Fairfield University, Hudson Valley Community College, Seton Hall, Wagner, George Washington University, St. Thomas Aquinas, Virginia Tech, University of Albany, SUNY Poly in Utica, Felician College, Villanova, and as well as Herkimer College right up the road from us. So it's been a busy off season, to say the least. You know, there's two sides of it. You know, signing players is one side, and then obviously getting sponsors lined up is the other important piece. And then the third and final piece for us is obviously that host family piece where we try to find housing for all of our players.
Yeah, and I don't think you have an off season, really. Right? I mean, you literally start this as soon as the season ends. You're into the next season, right?
And oftentimes before the season even ends, I will tell you that our season typically ends first week of August. With that being said, we've had players already signed before our season was over for the final upcoming season already. And, you know, we have sponsors that come to a lot of our games, and a lot of our sponsors, you know, throughout the season already commit to jumping on board with the DiamondDawgs for that upcoming season. So there's definitely no off season for us. So it's a labor of love, and and with everybody we have involved, from our sponsors to our host families to our players and coaches and everyone in the Mohawk Valley, it's definitely a grind, but everybody pulls together and give the community what they really like and that's DiamondDawgs baseball in the summer.
Yeah. How do you, I know when you pull players from certain universities that you've done it before, and so you've got kind of a track record. How do you attract these new schools? I mean, that maybe have not heard of you before.
It's funny how we get new schools, and really the new schools come because of former players that are now moved on to the coaching ranks, right? So a lot of times we have players that played with us, many years ago that stayed in the game of baseball who now cross over from a player to a coach, and they're at different programs. So a lot of the schools that we sometimes will get new players from are just a direct result of us having those relationships with our players that played with us in the past, who now want to give their players the experience that they had when they were with the Dogs.
I know you don't want to give names out, but can you say, like, are there returning players, and if so, how many?
I will say too that we do have some returning players, not only from the 24 season, but also the 23 season that are coming back.
Nice.
So again, there will be some familiar names that we will begin to announce after the first of the year. Like I said, we announced the colleges and universities that we have players coming from. But once we get to the new year, I'll start to release the names of these players and positions and what schools that they're actually coming from. So
okay,
all good stuff coming.
And coaching staff. What about the coaching staff?
Yeah, coaching staff. Again, we'll be announcing that again very soon. I will say that we have one returning coach and two new coaches, but again, that'll be released soon. We're excited to have new coaches on our staff. I think they're going to bring a lot of new energy, but we're excited for that as well.
You know me, I'm always trying to get that breaking news, right, Travis?
You're always trying to get the breaking news. Listen, I give you credit. You are definitely all over it, but you'll definitely be the first to know when we go public with all of our stuff.
I don't know. You get that thing out on social media before you ever get to me. So
yeah.
What about for the new season? Do you see any changes in how the game is run locally, or what you do, or anything from games for the kids, or anything? Any ideas, changes?
I always say for us, I think we do things very good. I think that the challenge that we have is going from being good to great. And I think that's the issue that I've had the last couple of years. Winning championships is great. I still think we provide affordable family fun, but I think we need to go back to some of the things we did early on when I first bought the team. And, Chris will speak to that a little bit as well. And that's why I asked Chris to be on today in regards to our host family program. But I think, again, going from good to great, that's the challenge, right? And we need to kind of mix some things up. I think we have some staff that all of our staff is returning, which is a huge piece to what we do as well. And we had some staff that were started last year that I think is going to come back. And really, I'm going to try to lean on them a little bit more, which is hard for me, to kind of get some new and fresh ideas and kind of let them run with it. Young kids in the college athletic programs that do have those new and fresh ideas that I just need to let them run with it.
Let them go.
And that's on me. That's a hard thing for me to let go, but I need to do better at that. So
yeah, you're the old guy. Let the new crew come in.
Yeah, I'm the old guy, and that's hard for me to say, but I guess that comes as you get older. But I do think we have some young talent as far as interns coming, and those that were interns that will be coming back as employees this year that are going to be doing some great things. So we're excited about that too.
Yeah. Before we go to the host program, I want to get just a couple more questions in.
Yeah, 100%.
Do you think back on the season, is there anything I know you always want to win a championship, right? I mean, that's the goal. But when you think about it, is it darn, we should have done this, or I could have done this, or is there any, not second guessing per se, but information that you use and think, God, this year I'm going to try this and I should have last year?
No, I think every year we reflect, right? And that's what we do as, in education or on the baseball field. You always want to reflect on how the year went. And, we're no different with the DiamondDawgs. Coach Luby and I sit down after the season and we reflect on not only the roster and what went well, what didn't go well, and try to fix those mistakes that we thought we had throughout the season in 2024. So that's one avenue about from the player standpoint, in recruiting. And then there's the operational standpoint. And that's something where I bring in Chris and, I talk to some other host families that we have and people that I trust and people that I think have my best interest at hand and, ask them their opinion. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. And I think this is the year where, my son is getting more involved. My daughter's graduating from high school. I need to delegate and I need to ask for help, which I said is my downfall. But I think with people like Chris in our corner and you and other people within the community, I think that's the big piece this year that's going to really make a difference is me starting to delegate and letting people help me that want to help.
So Chris, what's he asked you to do other than host more kids?
No, we'll keep hosting. I think that this is a good direction. I think that getting back to the beginning where more kids were in homes really solidifies the whole environment of the baseball team and the community. Travis has built an amazing program around family values and around families' entertainment. His connection with the little leagues and the county or the teams and throughout the counties, and bringing families to the ballpark, and then also hosting young men in homes with families brings that whole atmosphere to life. And I think it's critical. And I've thought about it a lot, as we've hosted guys and they've become part of our family. And even years later, they still are. My daughter just got married and there was a whole bunch of guys at the wedding from all over the place because they've become part of our family. And I think that adds value to their season. And I think it helps us to add value to them as a player. So I think getting back to that notion of being able to support them with families is critical. And especially as we look to win a championship or just to further success for some really successful young men.
Travis, initially then, was it everybody was in a host family? How did that, we're talking about transitioning back to the beginning, but what was the beginning and how did that change? And what are we trying to get back to?
In the beginning, when I started 18 years ago, it was, it's been a mixture of things, right? We've had off-campus housing at different colleges in the Herkimer County. We've had host families more so in the beginning. When host families stopped and we struggled with host families was during the COVID.
Yeah.
I think COVID really put a damper on the host family situation for us, and as well as others teams that have summer collegiate players coming to their area. But again, it's not because players did anything wrong that's why we lost host families. I think we lose host families because sometimes a lot of families that take players, sometimes they have young children and their children grow up and they become older and then they just age out. But host families, that's the big thing. You know, I think a lot of people hear the word families and hosting and they don't really know what that is. Host families come in different, forms. It could be a single person living at home by themselves and they have extra rooms available. It could be a traditional family. It could be, retired families. It could be young families. So they could be any, demographic background, anything, as long as they have a room for the players to stay in, it's safe. And, any new host family, to be honest with you, I do go to their house. I owe it to my players and their families that are coming to make sure it's a house that I would want my son or daughter to stay at. So we do screen a lot of the new families that we will have. And, we're not looking for anything other than, a family that can provide a nice place for our player to sleep. And they're pretty self-sufficient. And I think, they're basically playing baseball every day for 2 months. And on their off days, they just traditionally will go to Cooperstown or they'll go to the city and do things that they would not have done if they weren't playing in the state of New York. So all that stuff is really important for us. And I think it helps our players with that family atmosphere, as Chris mentioned before. Like that's what we pride ourselves on, is affordable family fun, giving kids the experience that they'll never forget and create those memories. And I just feel that having a host family just helps our product and it helps us on the field just as much as it helps us off the field.
From a player standpoint, Travis, what is that process like for them? Do they have a choice? How does this work as far as where they stay?
When I first signed players, we're a little different. I've signed players in August and signed players today. We build that relationship. We're big on relationships. So I try to build that connection with the player really early on in our signing. So I kind of get an understanding of what type of person the player is. And I do know the coaches that are sending us what type of player they are sending us. We want that blue collar kid. We don't want the kid that thinks they're bigger than the game. We want the grassroots kid. Every once in a while, you might get someone that doesn't fit that mold, but it doesn't mean they're a bad kid or a bad player. But that's the type of player we go after, right? We expect our kids to respect the rules of the host family, and we also have team rules as well. And again, we just want a great experience for our players, and we want a great experience for those that host as well. And the best thing about hosting is you come to games and now you have meaning to come to the game. There's a reason for you to come. It's a little more than just coming and watching the DiamondDawgs. Now you might have your player that you're hosting is pitching tonight or they're catching tonight. And the game just becomes more than just a game when you are hosting a players. I think Chris can attest to that as well.
Yeah. Chris, from your standpoint, you've really got two sides of it. One, what do you feel like the experience is like for a player coming to, say, your home? And then as a host person and your family hosting somebody, how does that feel? Explain both sides of that for me.
So we started several years ago, and it was a good family discussion. My children were still in high school and younger, but they were active in sports, and my husband had played college baseball, so it kind of found like a natural fit for us. We could watch baseball every night, and we have a big old farmhouse, so it was a great opportunity to fill some of those rooms up and look for something that filled a void in our life at the time. So we did, and going to games, it has a whole new feel now. We kind of missed not chasing the high school games every day or the college games when our kids were there. And this allows us to do it. And they quickly become like our children. So it is a way to watch your own family and watch good baseball every night of the week if you want to, and keep that alive if that's something that you're passionate about. Our place is a little bit different. We have a working dairy farm. That's what we do. So it offers a whole dimension for these guys to not only be part of the house, but part of the farm or the land or anything that they want to do there. So that has over the years been attractive and exciting for some of them. Most of them come from a life that's nowhere near that, and they enjoy the open space and the quiet and some of the new things. So that's exciting. The only rules I have when they come into my home is to be part of my family and part of my home and treat it like it was their own. And, they get a room and they get whatever food they want. When they're off nights, we sit around the dinner table and we eat as a family. If we're going to do something, they join us. If, they have issues, concerns, things to talk about, we talk to them like we would talk to our own kids. It's a very open relationship. It's encouragement and it's friendship, and it's a place to be more when they're away from home.
Yeah.
I think that's, I look at it as a mom, and I think sometimes, how would I feel if this was my son, and how would I want somebody treating him and helping him and supporting him? And at the end of the day, these are successful, very, very successful young men that are destined for greatness, even if it's not on the baseball field. And they really serve as mentors for the family, role models for the community, and they just become, a really big piece of something much bigger than themselves.
And you put those boys to work too, if they want, right?
If they want, I'm quick to tell them that it's an experience. And
I see Travis smiling back there. He's smiling about that.
Yep. Yeah, if they, it's their experience. They're there for 2 months, 2+ months. Do what you want to do. Learn about it, see it. If it's not your thing, hey, that's okay. But, most of them are pretty quick to jump on the RTVs and ride around. And, they all want to experience milking. They all love watching calves being born. I mean, there's all those fun pieces that they're never going to get to see elsewhere. And that's fine if that's not your thing. And if it is your thing or you want to learn about it, the opportunity exists. And I think that's just being open to new experiences in life. And that's an important message.
Have you got a story about a player that was there, something like really interesting that you could tell that we wouldn't have to bleep? Like an experience or something they had or something funny.
Well, I think some of the experiences that I think are kind of funny in our house is that so the house was built in 1840. The farm is 300 years old, and we have a ghost. So I never mentioned the ghost in the early days.
Oh, geez.
And over time, some of the guys figured that out. And so it is always kind of a joke. My funniest ghost story would be, we had a bunch of players that had got there. And then John and I were headed to the airport to pick up a player who was coming in from California. And there was one room left by itself, and then a room that would be 2 guys in the same room. So as I was leaving, Crandall, one of my players, said to me, "Oh, he either bunks in with me or he gets to sleep with the ghost." And I said, so they were going to tell him that.
Oh, geez.
And I said, can you just wait till he gets home before you start, in on the ghost whole thing? So we left. We picked him up at the airport. We stopped for dinner on our way home, and he gets a text and he starts chuckling. And he said, "So the guys just told me I'm sleeping with the ghost."
They didn't wait.
Right. So I said, well, not really. And so I kind of filled him in, and I said, but when we get home, I need you to help me with something. So we get home, and the other guys are sitting in the living room, and we introduce Bronson, and we're all talking. And I said, Crandall, you kind of let it slip that he might have to sleep with the ghost. So I think that's okay, because he could also sleep with you, but we might have a problem. And Crandall had let me know when he first got there that he was afraid of spiders.
Oh, geez.
So I said, Bronson brought his pet, and it's something small. It's in a cage. It's no big deal, but it would mean being in your room if he bunks in with you. And he's like, "Oh, no problem. What's he got?" And I said, "A pet tarantula." Well, I didn't realize at that point that Crandall's fear of spiders was real. And he like literally almost hyperventilated. He was so afraid of that tarantula coming into his room. So yeah, we all had to come clean and it all worked fine. Bronson slept with a ghost and he had a great summer. But, it's that kind of dynamic that quickly turns them into friends. And, as much as housemates for the summer.
Yeah, and those are great stories for players to hear who are thinking about playing for the DiamondDawgs, that they get that kind of experience in the Valley here. And I think it's probably unique to a lot of places they might go otherwise, right?
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. And it's amazing how many guys over the years come to us that know other guys who or have heard other stories or were teammates. A lot of our guys will go back and send their teammates and say, oh, you got to live here. Or they'll come to the farm and they'll know they have connections to all these guys from playing sports and the baseball community, as big as it is, it's really small. And that's really, really fun to watch. The interactions and the connections. But I look at the guys we've had over the years, and so many of these guys to this day are best friends. They come as total strangers and go away as best friends. I have 2 and maybe 3. I know that there was a petition to get a copy of a tattoo that was drawn of the farm, and a couple of the players went back and tattooed their leg with a picture of the farm that they drew. And
oh, good
my
Lord.
comment when
I gotta see that.
You haven't seen that?
I haven't seen that.
Oh, I will send it to you.
Okay.
I remember Jimmy's one of them.
Jimmy's
so
got that?
Keegan,
okay.
Jimmy
all right.
and Keegan did the artwork, then went and got the tattoo. Chris was looking to see if he could get rights to use it. Last I knew, I hadn't heard. But when Jimmy first showed it to me, I just looked at Jimmy and I said, that's there forever. And he goes, yep. that was it. So
did Keegan get it as well?
Keegan did. They
Okay.
both have it on their thigh. Great big picture of the barn.
Well, I'm not going to ask to see their thighs then.
Yeah, you got to ask. Yep.
No, that's not. Drop your drawers. I need to see your thighs.
Yep.
Not going to happen.
So if you wanted, probably the most recent connection for me to all of this, and I don't even know, Travis, if you know this, but my daughter got married the last day of September. So the wedding was on the farm. You guys know that John passed away over a year ago. I was struggling with walking down the aisle by myself because John wasn't there, or who was gonna, and how was all that gonna work. Jimmy Joyce escorted me down the aisle. Jimmy was one of my players from 19 and again from 21, who I have a mother-son relationship in many, many ways. And he now is with the Mariners. He got released for the weekend, came to the wedding, walked me down the aisle, had a great time.
That is so cool.
That is where this ends today. It's family. It's all about family, and it's long-term relationships, and it's an exciting way to meet these guys and to impact their life in whatever way they're looking for.
Wow, that's awesome. Travis, how many families are you looking for when it comes to how many do you need?
We have approximately 35 players that's going to be on our roster. Obviously in the perfect world, we like to have housing for all 35. But we always do have a plan B because you have to. But plan A is always going to be host families for the reasons that Chris gave. I think it just makes our product that much better. And I think it just adds to the experience that our players have. The host families that we've had in the past and the host families that we currently have are amazing. They're great people. Baseball has really brought a lot of people that might not otherwise known each other or become friends to create friendships. And it's done the same for us. So, we're looking for homes for 35 players. And if we don't find homes for 35, we do have another option, but this option is the one that we really, really would like to have first and foremost, because I think it's something that we are missing. And you asked me when the beginning of this, what is something we would like to do in 2025? And for me, it would be to have as many host families as possible for our players that are coming.
You'd have one more bet if Chris would just kick the ghost out of that room. You'd end up with an extra slot there.
That'd be good if we get that ghost out of there for sure. So
I think for anybody that's feeling like, what does this mean? I think it might be a little overwhelming to think about it at first. It really doesn't change your life drastically. These guys are like Travis said, they're independent. They're good young men. They're playing baseball. They're busy. They're tired. So they're sleeping and eating. And when they're not, they're gone. And for anybody that likes baseball or has children that are active in baseball or coaches, they're really role models and they're mentors, and they really strike a chord with, I've had kids that are friends, my own grandchildren that have come over and thrown ball with my guys. I've had guys come over and work with kids that we know locally. They want to help. They remember the days when they were a kid looking for somebody to throw with them or give them a hand up. They're just really, really warm young men who want to be part of, a family while they're here chasing a big dream. And that really is all you're asked to do. And I think at the end of the day, I get far more than I give. And if I was a young parent or a young parent with some kids that were interested in baseball and could put these guys in my home who would mentor and role model my children, that's a blessing. And I think, think about it and look at it. It's a little over 2 months. It's a short period in time for a lifetime of memories.
Yeah. And they're not really there that much. Like you said,
Yep.
They've got practices every day. They've got games. They get, what do you give, 1 day off a week, Travis, if that?
Yeah, some days they don't get that, but traditionally it's 1 day in a seven out of 7. They're getting a day off.
Yeah.
And they cook for, most of them will cook, they'll make their own breakfast. They'll make lunches to take on the way. They'll come home and warm up leftovers. It's not a huge thing. They're independent. The nice thing for me is the nights when they are home and we can sit and have dinner together and visit and some of those things. But they pretty much take care of themselves.
Yeah.
They do their own laundry. They pick up after themselves. I've never had an issue with anybody.
And Chris, how many players have you hosted?
54.
Just a handful. That's why I said a zillion at the beginning, right?
Yep.
A lot of players.
A lot of players. And I know, Chris, for you, it becomes a network. These host families, you end up knowing because a lot of you go to the games when they play all the home games and stuff, and you're all talking to each other and you have similar experiences. So you build a network out in that way. But also, I know, Travis, the night that you have them step out onto the field and acknowledge the host families and the players come out and stand next to them, that's always a great moment as well.
Yeah, and as of late, we haven't had the opportunity to do that like we used to do. We used to have, the whole first base side was just full of host families and kids and players, and that's what we really, really want to get back to. And I think, it is meaningful and it does get emotional. These host families get attached to the players and they do become a part of your family and for 2 months and you never know. And Chris has been lucky. She's had, many great players, but she has a player in Jimmy Joyce that has the potential to be the next Diamond Dog to make it to the big leagues. And that could happen to anyone that hosts a player. Right. But like Chris said, whether they go on to get drafted or make it to Major League Baseball, we have players that are former players that are doctors and lawyers, and they've gone on to do great things.
Willie Shaw, musician, Nashville.
Yeah, musicians. We have. You never know what's going to happen in regards to the player that you host, and again, those are the friendships that you have, and those are memories you'll always have. So
yeah.
Go ahead, Chris. I work off the farm, and when I hire employees for an office, and when I think of what I look for an employee, it's somebody that's got a solid work ethic and they're responsible and they're committed and they work at the top of their level and they're bigger. They're looking for things bigger than themselves and they're part of a team. All of these guys speak to that. And when you look at, having somebody in your home that's such a great role model, for your children, for your community, those are really big. And I truly think that these guys bring with them so much that fills my life in their time and beyond. than I ever give. It's just a really, really good way to when you think the whole world's going bad and there's no good kids out there, this will quickly change your mind.
Awesome. Travis, if somebody's interested, how do they get hold of you?
Yeah, the easiest way to get a hold of me is through email, and that email is Travis, Travis, at mvdiamond, DIAMOND, dogs, DAWGS.com, or any of our social media platforms. You can send direct messages, or you can call 315-985-0692, and we will definitely return your phone call.
Awesome. Well,
I would take
Go ahead,
I
Chris.
would take emails if anybody has questions, wants to talk. I can give you my email address.
Go for it, Chris.
C Nellis, Nellis, 6363 at gmail.com. Definitely email me, ask me any question you want. I would love to talk to you. I, again, can't say enough about what it's done for my life and my family's life.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank both of you for coming on the show today. I think this will be helpful. Hopefully we'll get some more families signed up, Travis, and keep me posted as to how the team is moving along here, especially after the first of the year. Maybe we'll have you back on and when you can start talking about names and new coaches and stuff like that.
100%. Well, Dave, we appreciate all you do to support the Diamond Dogs, and we can't thank you enough as well. So thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you, everybody. That's all we have today for Small Town Life, part of the Studio 25 Podcast Network. We'll see you next time.